Hey there fellow Planeswalkers, it's Steve for Collector Mania, and we're continuing on our Commander Brawl series. Today we're doing things a little bit differently, and we're actually following one of the new rules that's been implemented in the format, which is that you can use Planeswalkers as your commander. So, our Planeswalker that we've chosen today is Chandra, Defiance. If you haven't played with this card or had the opportunity to play against this card, it's absolutely ridiculous. 2 colors, 2 red. So first ability, basically exile the top card of your library, you may cast that card this turn. If you don't, Chandra Defiance deals 2 damage to each opponent, so just a little bit of extra card draw, plus a way to deal damage to everybody. It's got another +1 that adds 2 red to your mana pool, really powerful. Then we've got a -3, Chandra Defiance deals 4 damage to target creature. Then -7, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. Overall, great abilities. I think this is honestly our best choice for mono red commander for Brawl so far. It just does so much. I mean, it has so much utility, and then without the downside of there being no commander damage in the format, so we're not necessarily worried about that at all, so it doesn't really matter having our commander actually be a creature that can do damage. Yeah. So breaking into our creatures here, we've got a Soulscar Mage. So this is a red 1/2 human wizard with prowess. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counters on that creature instead. So this is actually a really important effect for our deck. We have a lot of damage-based removal, and not any, there's only like 2 spells in the entire deck that said destroy, and they're mostly towards artifacts. So we need a way to deal with those larger threats, you know, because we're not going to be able to damage them out most of the time. So being able to put -1/-1 counters on them instead is actually pretty powerful. It'll get rid of a lot of problems for us. Next up, we've got a Direfleet Daredevil, so a colorless and a red, 2/1. First strike, it's kind of a really weird snapcaster. It enters the battlefield and then you exile an instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard and you can cast it until end of turn by spending mana of any type for any color. Yeah, this really isn't, I know I say snapcaster, but it's not really a straight comparison. It doesn't really work that way. But once again, if we hit something like a Fumigate or just a way to draw cards and then just be able to cast it, could be pretty important. I've got a Harsh Mentor, so I've seen this card do work in Commander, and I think it'll do a lot of work here. Just basically every time they activate an ability, an artifact, creature, or land, they take 2 damage, so that could keep people from doing super degenerate things. Could also just spread some damage around early game, and then just help us out, close out the game late game. And I've got a Tillinolli's Summoner, so a colorless and a red. It has City's Blessing or Ascend, so as soon as you have 10 permanents, this is essentially active. Whenever you attack with it, you can pay X and a red, and then create that many 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. If you have the City's Blessing, they don't go away at the end of the turn, so that can be pretty important. I've got Captain Landry Storm. I included this as kind of a ramp card, so 2 colorless and a red. Whenever it attacks, it creates a token for you. It's also got haste, so it comes out swinging, basically. You have the upside of also being able to sacrifice the tokens to make her a little bit bigger. I don't really see that coming into play a whole lot. You really just want to get these tokens to cast your bigger spells later on. And then you've got a Combat Celebrant. So 2 colorless and a red, 4/1. If Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it, and then you essentially get another combat phase. So great finisher. You know, maybe this has to sit out on the board for a turn or so in order to really work, but could actually be pretty powerful, especially with some of the cards that you'll see later on. Then we've got a Lightning Rig Crew. So this card to me is more filler at this point, just because we don't have that many great pieces, but a 0/5, especially when we're running a commander that is a planeswalker, could be pretty important. You know, just be a good blocker. Plus the upside is at the beginning of the end step on the turn, right before yours, you can just tap it, deal 1 damage to each opponent. There's never a downside there. I don't really anticipate it untapping a lot. There's only 4 or 5 pirates in the deck, so that's not really going to happen. I've got PNLR, so just a great body, really. So it's 2 colorless and a red, 2/2, that creates a 1/1 flyer when it comes into play. Also has 2 activated abilities. You can sacrifice an artifact and make it so target creature can't block, or you can just pay 1 and a colorless and give an artifact a little bit of fire breathing. So pretty powerful. They've got Rummaging Goblin. This is a little bit of our limited card draw, or rummage if you want to call it. So 2 colorless and a red, discard a card, draw a card. You know, when we're getting land flooded, this will get us out of that, so that's really all we need it for. Then we got Captivating Crew, so 3 colorless and a red, Human Pirate 4/3. It's got an activated ability, 3 colorless and a red, gain control of target creature an opponent controls. Until end of turn, untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you cast a sorcery. So if you think about something like this, it's just a great threat and effect. You can gain control of multiple creatures in a turn and swing out and kill somebody. Or if you really get into like lines of play and you think about like gaining control of like an Azor, and then using your colorless treasure tokens to sacrifice and add any mana, any color mana to your mana pool, and then swing with that Azor and then do the Sphinx's Revelation ability, yeah, that's actually pretty powerful. So just keep those kind of things in mind when you're playing with a card like this. I've got Forerunner of the Empire, so this essentially just tutors you up a dinosaur and puts it on top of your library, and then when the dinosaur enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature. Or he deals 1 damage to each creature. So 3 colors and a red, 1/3, human soldier. Really, we're not running a dinosaur deck, but this tutoring effect is really powerful, especially for 3 of the bigger dinosaurs that we have in the deck. So yeah, just good utility here. Then we've got Hazard the Fervent, sorry. As I've talked about prior, these are loosely based on the Challenger decks, so this was just a great auto include that is already in the deck that I'm going to tear apart to build this deck. So yeah, 3 colors and a red, 5/4, indestructible haste. You can only attack or block with it if you're hellbent, so if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand, or heckbent as people call it nowadays. 2 colors and a red, discard a card, Hazard deals 2 damage to each opponent. So this could be actually come into play, if you're just sitting with a bunch of lands in your hand and you just need a little bit of damage to kill everybody, it could definitely work. We've got Heart Piercer Manticore. This is another card that's in our removal suite, so it's 2 colors, 2 red. When it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice a creature, and then it deals the damage of that creature's power to target creature or player. It's also got Embalm, so 5 colors and a red, so you can bring it back from the graveyard as a token of itself and do it all again. Not bad at all. Then we've got a Rekindling Phoenix, so a 4/4 that essentially gets itself back by creating a token and then sacrificing that token and bringing itself back from the graveyard. 4/3 flyers are never bad, and then something that can recur itself is always good. Plus the artwork on this card is just stunning. I've got a Skyship Stalker, so 2 colors, 2 red, dragon, 3/3, has 3 activated abilities. You can pay 1 for each of them. First one gives +1/+0, second one is First Strike, last one is Haste, so pretty relevant. I mean, you can block giant flyers with this, or just giant ground creatures, and just make this be able to survive it too, so good combat tricks, all kinds of awesomeness here. I've got a Courtbringer, so another one of our removal cards, so 3 colorless, 2 red, flying haste, 4/4, you can exert it to deal 4 damage to target non-dragon creature an opponent controls, so limited removal, but it definitely works. You're not always going to want to exert this guy because you want to be able to untap and attack with him, but when you need to, you definitely can. Then we've got Neheb the Eternal, so 3 colors, 2 red, afflict 3, so whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. Then it has, at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. It's also a 4/6, so really I danced around with this actually being the commander of this deck, in my mind for quite a bit, but I ended up on Chandra just because it's got a little bit more utility. I don't think we have the pieces to really make Neheb shine in this format, unfortunately. If we were back still in like Shadows over Innistrad, we could definitely start including Eldrazi, and that would totally make sense, but right now, maybe not the best as far as commander, but I could definitely see a build around it in the future. Then we've got Burning Sun's Avatar, so 3 colors, 3 red, enters the battlefield, deals 3 damage to target opponent and 3 damage to up to 1 target creature that player controls. Actually, it's not even target player controls, that's even more powerful than I thought. That's also a 6/6, so just a good dinosaur, really good beater. I wish this was an attack trigger too, like Sun Titan, but it's not. But overall, a little bit of removal and a little bit of damage. Then we've got a Combustible Gear Hulk. This is still one of my favorite cards. I'll be really sad when it cycles out with Chandra, unfortunately. So 4 colors, 2 red, artifact creature, construct, first strike, 6/6, and essentially when it comes into play, your opponent can either have you put the top 3 cards of your library and take the damage equal to the CMC on those cards, or they can have you draw 3 cards. In my opinion, neither one of those options are good for your opponent. Sometimes they'll just get nuked, and sometimes they'll just let you draw 3 cards. Just depends. Then we've got Atali Primal Storm. This is another great contender for commander of like a mono-red Brawl deck, but once again, I just think the utility on Chandra is just too great. So 4 colors, 2 red, 6/6. Whenever it attacks, you exile the top card of each of your opponents, or each player's deck, and then you can cast all those spells essentially. So really, really powerful kind of ridiculous. It's basically the reason we're running the Forerunner in here. And then lastly, we've got a silver clad Ferocidon, so 5 colors, 2 red. It's got enraged, so whenever it receives damage, each opponent has to sacrifice a permanent. So it's a great way to keep up your defenses because you just keep this giant 8/5 up, and then if they swing at you, they have to sacrifice something. But it's also a great way to have a little bit of like attrition removal, where you can just kind of start pinging this guy with little bits of damage here and there, and then having all of your opponents have to sacrifice giant things, you know, could be really powerful. Breaking into our artifacts here, we've got a perpetual timepiece. This is essentially our stand-in for Elixir of Immortality. We can sacrifice it and put whatever amount of cards from our graveyard back into our library, or we can just use it to mill people, which I don't think we'll ever end up doing. We've got a treasure map, so this is a way for us to generate treasure tokens plus scry 1. You scry 1 3 times essentially, and then you get to flip this over and create 3 treasure tokens, and then it turns into a land that says add 1 color to your mana pool, or tap, sacrifice a treasure, draw a card. So really limited card draw, but it's something that we could include. And we've got Hazard's Monument. So 3 colors, red creature spells you cast cost 1 colors less to cast, so really powerful there, especially since our entire deck is red. Also has whenever you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Once again, limited rummage effects, kind of just drawing through our deck. And then Conkers Galleon. There's a little bit of a footnote here. With cards like this, I think it's a good thing to start picking these up, especially if you're planning on playing a lot of Brawl and building a lot of Brawl decks. I think cards like this will be picked up just because they're staples of the format. I mean, these are almost like our Soul Rings, you know, not as powerful as like Soul Rings, but they're pretty powerful. They go in any deck and basically the effect is always good. So 4 colors, 2/10, vehicle, crew 4. Whenever it attacks, return it to the battlefield, or exile it, then return it to the battlefield at the end of combat, transformed under your control, and it turns into Conqueror's Foothold. So this land is ridiculous. You can tap to add a color to your mana pool, you can pay 2 and tap, draw a card, then discard a card, or you can pay 4 and tap, draw a card, and then 6 and tap, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's got card draw, recursion, basically everything you want on a card like this, and the fact that it's a land is just ridiculous. Then we've got Sunbirds Invocation, probably one of the most powerful enchantments in the entire format. So we've got 5 colors and a red. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You may cast a card revealed this way with converted mana cost X or less without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So if you think about it, you cast a combustible Gear Hulk, you can all of a sudden turn it into a captivating crew as well. So just so many good lines of play there, really, really powerful. Then we're moving on to our instant speed spells. We've got a Braid, so this is just great because it can deal 3 damage to a creature or destroy an artifact, so pretty good removal. Then we've got a Fling, so if you're sitting in the late game and you really just have one opponent left and you've got a giant creature, all of a sudden you can bypass combat and fling this at them, or even deal combat damage then fling it at them. So a lot of really interesting lines to play there. We've got a Shatter, so just another artifact removal spell. I think as long as Kaladesh is in the format, this is great to have in the deck. I think after Kaladesh rotates out, you know, get rid of it. It's not going to be as relevant. We've got a Fateful Showdown, one of the best card draw spells that we have. So 2 colors, 2 red. Essentially, you ditch your entire hand and deal damage to target creature or player, I believe it is. No, target creature or player. And then draw that many cards. So really, you're just cycling like 5 lands into 5 gas cards and dealing with the threat. Just great. And then our sorceries, we've got Release the Gremlins, 2X and the red, destroy X target artifacts, create X 2/2 red gremlin creature tokens. So destroying other people's permanents and gaining creatures, sign me up. Tormenting Voice, we all know what this does. A colorless and a red, discard a card, draw 2 cards. I've got Insult to Injury. This is a great way to actually just finish the game. I've won many games off the back of this card. Essentially, first half of it, damage can't be prevented this turn. If a sorcerer you control would deal damage this turn, it deals double that damage instead. So it's got a lot of utility here. Like if you just need to kill something with Chandra just by minusing 3 and it's got like more than 4 power, you can just cast an insult. I know it kind of feels bad, but if you need to do it, it works. Also, like I said, all of your combat damage is going to be doubled. Like there's just so many ridiculous things you can do with this card. And then the injury side is injury deals 2 damage to target creature and 2 damage to target player. So if you cast them at the same turn, or in the same turn, you deal 4 damage to target player and 4 damage to a creature. So not bad at all. Then we got Karizev's Expertise, so a colorless and 2 red. Gain control of target creature or vehicle, it gains haste, all that stuff, threat and effect like normal. And then you can also cast a 2 or less card from your hand for free without paying its mana cost. So just an interesting include here. Now we got a Pirate's Pillage. So the more I look at this card, the more I like it. And I don't think I would have looked at it otherwise if I wasn't building Brawl decks, essentially. So 3 colorless and a red, sorcery as an additional cost, discard a card, so just like Tormenting Voice. But it also has draw 2 cards and create 2 colorless treasure tokens that can basically sacrifice and add one mana of any color to your mana pool. So yeah, really kind of cool. It's interesting. I'll definitely be playing with it as much as I can. Then we've got Hour of Devastation. This is our board wipe, so 3 colors, 2 red. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-bolus planeswalker. So great way to clear up the board. You know, especially planeswalkers can be a problem sometimes. Then we're moving on to our lands here. So this is another one of those cards that I really think is going to be a staple in the format. So Arch of Orazca, so it's got Ascend, so City's Blessing, just got to have 10 permanents to turn this thing on. You tap, add a color to your mana, or add a colorless to your mana pool, and then you can pay 5 and tap, draw a card, activate this ability only if you control cities or have City's Blessing. Really, really powerful. Like I said, once again, pick these cards up because I think this will be a staple and people will be after it for sure. And Desert of the Fervent, so just a cycle land. They've got Endless Sands. This is a great way to get more value out of our ETB effects, so like Combustible Gear Hulk, again, we can exile it 1 turn and then bring it back later. Yeah, it works, especially with like limited land destruction. I think there's like 2 or 3 cards. We'll be looking at one here in a second, but it's not as risky as it is in normal Commander to play this card, and I think, once again, this will be a staple. Then we've got Field of Ruin, so this is one of those land destruction spells I was talking about, so 2 adds a colorless. You can also pay 2 and tap it, sacrifice Field of Ruin, destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Each player searches his or her library for a basic land, puts it onto the battlefield, then shuffles his or her library. And then the rest is just mountains. So moving past this, I did want to talk about a few cards that I've been looking at in Dominaria that would be good includes in here. So Jazzimmolating Inferno would be a great one, so X and 2 red. Can only cast it if you control a legendary permanent. Jazzimmolating Inferno deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. So great way to finish out a game, especially in a multiplayer format. Think about it, if you have enough mana, you can just kill all 3 of your opponents at once, and that could be pretty cool. Then I was really excited to see that this card was getting a reprint. So 3 colorless, 2 red, Siege Gang Commander, 2/2, enters the battlefield, create 3 1/1 red Goblin creature tokens, and then pay a colorless and a red, sacrifice a Goblin. Siege Gang Commander deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So this is just a auto include in my opinion. Goes great in the deck, goes great for defending Chandra, goes great into just dealing with threats. Yeah, just an amazing card. I've got Varric's Bladewing, so 2 colors, 2 red, legendary creature dragon. It's got Kicker 3, so flying. When Varric's Bladewing enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create Karot's Bladewing, a legendary 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So early on, it's just a 4/4 flyer, which is great, and then later on, it's 2 4/4 flyers for 7, which is even better. And then we've got Zalfirian Void. It's a land, colorless, taps for colorless, enters the battlefield, scry 1. I think this is another one of those cards that could be a staple. You can go in basically every deck, and then scry 1 is pretty powerful, actually. With that, I believe that's the end of it. So anyway, I hope you guys are still enjoying these Brawl Deck techs, and look forward to the rest of them. I think the last one that we got to do, we're still trying to figure out as far as like the Challenger deck Brawl turnover, morph into Commander thing. But we'll get it figured out here soon. But yeah, once again, look forward to the rest, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.